Accurate. Yes, welcome to the No State Project here on my YouTube channel. I was still on LRN.FM in the podcast loop. So, if you're listening there, great. I appreciate you getting the podcast, which you can also get at markstevens.net. And it is November 20th, 2019. And we actually got a storm going on here in the valley. It's pretty nice. We don't get a lot of rain here in Mesa, Arizona, Phoenix, the Phoenix Valley. So when we do, it's always, at least for me and my family, we think it's a treat. It's pretty nice. I grew up on Long Island where it rained all the time or it was overcast, and so it took me a while to really appreciate the rain. And it rained last night. It's always nice. I go to sleep anyway. We always put on a YouTube video with the rain. So last night didn't really have to since it rained all night, which was pretty cool. I want to thank everyone for their continued support of the big show. And if you would like to be able to do that, and it is much appreciated, markstevens.selz.com. That's cells with a Z, SELZ. Hey, old fine anarchist. Yep, aloha, mahalo for our Hawaii listeners. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm actually going to we're going to say happy F the Cops Day. Every day it's F the government. It's not just the useful idiots, the tools. It's all of them. Well, not all of them. Some of them, well, they're a criminal organization, but the accountants aren't the ones going out and killing people and bombing. Markstevens.net is the website. You can also support the show there. And there I can talk. So if you're being attacked by a bureaucrat, government indicted, as the book is a full model for having to learning how to effectively defend against these baseless charges. And boy, I got a big one here today. I think I screwed up again because there was a problem YouTube wasn't recognizing anything again. That's not my fault. That's a YouTube thing there. So I have to actually get onto the caller line. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to do this like I did last week, and I actually did pretty good, where I was able to do this without screwing things up. So that's the benefit of being able to mute out. So I was able to connect to the caller line completely muted out. So that's another one of my useless talents, though. But I'm happy to display this for everyone to see live. And so going blind here, let's see. We can get that. But while I'm doing this, then if you want to call in, it's 218-632-9399. That's 218-632-9399. Hey, I did it. How about that, you guys? Huh? Look at this over here. 2 times blind and on the first try. So, yeah, we'll mute that out. The caller, yes, the 2020 is in the pound sign is the, if you're calling on the call line, the 2020 and the pound sign is the passcode, although there should be a recording at the beginning that gets you that. So if not, 2020 and the pound sign. You can instant message me first on Skype at Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with that there number 3. So I don't know who the other Frank Rizzos are, but they beat me to that. Back in 2006, there was already a few Frank Rizzos. Although I don't know how many of those were just for the jerky boys. But the cool ones made it a Jerky Boys reference. For the real, if there's someone who's really Frank Rizzo, well, all right. They might be Paisan. I read this yesterday, and so what I titled the show is Saudi Arabia criminalizing feminism, atheism, and homosexuality as crimes. And so reporting here is amnesty.org, Amnesty International, that exposes the kingdom's dangerous intolerance. Well, obviously, this is this should not come as news to anybody. I was under the impression that homosexuality has long been a crime in Saudi Arabia. I Was it just a formalization or something here? I don't know, but they've been stoning people to death, stoning people to death. This is obviously not all tyrants are at this level of brutality and are stuck in the practically the Stone Age. Well, but this is something that's not new. What seems to be new here is atheism and feminism. Now, feminism, obviously, in a place like Saudi Arabia, women are not treated as equal. Not too many places in the world where women are totally equal. Some more than others, but Saudi Arabia, really, not. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say women are treated horribly. One, they have to be completely covered up. What do they call it? A burqa? Whatever it is, I know there's various degrees. Sometimes it's just like a headscarf where the hair, the hair is covered. But then you've got the full black outfit. Women in Saudi Arabia couldn't drive until just a few years ago, in the 2000 teens. Not 1919. 2000, it just, so feminism, all feminism is it's a very simple ideology. It just says that men and women are equal. Doesn't mean equal physically. There are obviously some biological differences there, although there are some dedicated women and women athletes that could run circles and lift twice as much as the average guy. Sure, obviously, but still, you don't have women, even women of equal weight in same weight class, competing with men. It's just not. Men have a structural advantage. Men they carry more muscle mass. They have more testosterone naturally, and obviously a 200-pound woman going against a 200-pound athlete. Two athletes at 200 pounds. One is born a female, and the other is male. Not going to be fair, but it's talking about the way they're treated, and they have the same opportunities, not the same results, but the same opportunities. So my gosh, wow, feminism a crime, an ideology a crime. So the ideology that seems to justify and call for killing people for being homosexual, that's not criminal. The irony here, what should be criminal is requiring women to dress a certain way, not letting women drive a car, not letting women uncover their face. That is an ideology that should be criminalized. That should not be tolerated at all. Cutting off someone's hand because they stole a loaf of bread, that ideology is dangerous. That is sick. But then they go even. You almost can't believe that this stuff is real, that this is happening in this day and age. The Saudi state security agency's announcement, which labels feminism, atheism, and homosexuality as extremist ideas punishable by jail and flogging, is outrageous, clearly contradicting the kingdom's bogus reforms image, which Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman continues to flaunt internationally. Well, yeah, they had a man butchered alive. Jamal Khashoggi, who had left the craziness of Saudi Arabia, left the Middle East, and was a journalist working in the United States. If it was up to me, it said, well, look, you cannot get married if you don't go back to the Middle East. All right, I'm not going to get married. We're just going to have to live as if we're married. We're not going to get the certificate. You couldn't pay me enough money to go to Saudi Arabia or any place that is barbaric and where the ideology has not advanced beyond beyond the Stone Age. Homosexuality. But you know, people who are homosexual, just even till recently in the United States, there were laws against it. Thank goodness the tide turned. But it wasn't official policy to kill and make it a crime to be homosexual in the United States. Okay, you know, I mean, the lynches or the killings, that was not state sponsored. Here, you've got a government doing this, and because we're so so reliant still on their main export, which is probably their only export other than brutality, oil, petroleum, that they're tolerated. Just like China. China has literal concentration camps, not just like the ones for the United States government has and separating children. Actual concentration camps because of dangerous thoughts. So what's happening in Hong Kong, of course, people being the narrative is that they are being arrested and shipped to China, which is what started this whole thing in the first place about being extradited to China. Can you imagine how hateful? Wow, homosexuality being a crime. And then we get to atheism, which I don't want to get into splitting hairs about agodism or anything like that. That's a level of hair splitting that I'm not interested in. Atheism, all it is, I know some people like to say, well, atheism is their religion. No. And someone had a really, really good analogy that I read the other day. And I think it does a great job of showing what the nature of atheism really is. And that is, think of religion in general as a TV. And you've got 100,000 channels. All different flavors of Christianity and Buddhism and this and that, the other thing over here, different types of Judaism. Atheism is the off button. I don't want any of it. All it is not simply not believing in the supernatural, in the concept of God. That's all it is. It is not a religion. It is a lack of belief. And atheists come of all types of stripes. Atheists are not just, Cambridge educated, scientists. Atheists could be as dumb as a bag of hammers. Okay? All it is literally just a not believing in something. So like the TV, the off button. Well, which channel do you like? I like the off button. I don't like. None of this is persuasive to me. None of it. And now it's a crime. Wasn't it always? But we'll take it. The reporting here. It is a crime not to be, to believe or act as if you believe in religious, teachings. It is just one more example. And I know it's an extreme example of statism. I get it. Not all. I mean, you don't have things like that in Sweden or Norway or even, Canada. You don't. As bad as things could be here in the United States, it's not Saudi Arabia. That could actually be a selling point for the United States. Hell, it's not Saudi Arabia. Apache Junction, Arizona. It's not Saudi Arabia. All right. That's a pretty good selling point to me over here, you know? I it's interesting here that, well, maybe at one point they will include anarchists, because an anarchist, like, is not believing in a ruling class. So are they going to go ahead and declare anarchists and anarchy to be a criminal offense and belief system or non-belief system? If you don't believe in that, I can't even begin to imagine how unbelievably awful it must be to live in places like Saudi Arabia. How there isn't a mass exodus out of there, or just people storming the castle. I mean, it is like the Middle Ages, right? Storming the castle and killing the king. It's wow. How, again, it's just like Trump said. What do they give us? They give me millions of dollars. What am I going to do? Not like them? Well, look how they treat women. Look how they treat people who are homosexual. My gosh, they're going to start killing people, flogging them for not being a theist. Someone who turns that TV off and just is not persuaded at all by that ideology. And now it's criminal. If you don't believe this, you're a criminal. Wow. I mean, it's just like China. What are you supposed to do? I mean, this was kind of ethical dilemma that non-entity brought up to me on a different subject. When almost all of your life, at some point, is connected to China. What do you do? I think the main thing that would hurt them is an economic sanction, but you can't do that because they got you. So what are you going to do? Boycott everything that's Saudi Arabia and China? I don't see how we can. You could do some boycotting, but it's almost impossible to avoid the influence of China on the economy and our lives. Saudi Arabia too. I just had to get gas again. I know there's supposed to be some divesting because they know the writing is on the wall that maybe 15, 20, or 30 years from now, people won't have nearly as much use for oil. So they're going to lose a major part of the power. But for right now, how much can we successfully boycott Saudi Arabia and China? Every damn thing is made in China. So you've got re-education camps in China in 2019. You have China that, as a government that is engaged, and now it's been reported more than a few times, and the reports look credible, of organ harvesting. Imagine, well, you don't think right, and they put you on these re-education camps, and you're a healthy adult, your kidneys, we don't think you're going to need those kidneys while you're here. And there are credible reports that kidneys and other organs are removed while you are awake. Seems like the Chinese learned very well from what the Japanese did to them in the 30s. Some sick things going on. So what do you do? Hell, we can't. I don't know. I don't know. Does it? It looks like what they're doing in Hong Kong is a step in the right direction. But look how violent the police are getting. The police are actually using an ambulance. You call a damn amber lamps and they're cops. The cops are using it. And there was video the other day where they were using a small bus to actually ram protesters. They are really ramping up the violence. There was also the video where a news organization that was not kind to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party that was torched. It was set on fire. So, all right, someone's saying, again, we are not dependent on their oil. That is the party line, so its price can go up. Yeah, we have. I know there's OPEC, and I've reported this on the show before, where the oil companies, in the Middle East, they deliberately cut production to falsify the supply, that they couldn't meet the demand, and so they made it look like there was more demand than there really was because they cut the production, and to justify jacking up the rates. I live in here. The cheapest gas you can get out here is $2.95. We are never going to see gas get to $2 a gallon again. It's not in the car. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, there is electric, but how many of us can afford to buy a $75,000 car? Well, like you say, Non-E, life is messy. Things are not as black and white as we would like them to be. There's not always an easy solution to these problems. So there you have it. Another example of Saudi Arabia just absolutely barbaric. How the hell? I mean, seriously, how do you make atheism a crime? How flimsy is your ideology that you have to kill people for not believing in it? That's right, because it's supposed to be a religion of peace. And yet you have here an Islamic State that makes it that if you don't believe in their ideology, put you to death. Not because you're trying to overthrow them, which, I mean, yeah, that's a great idea. I think every one of the royal families should be given the same treatment that they give to homosexuals and feminists and what they're probably already doing to atheists. Nah. Just sick. This is what could they get away with this if people did not believe in the ideology of statism? I don't think that they would have such a platform. I don't think that they would be able to be so brutal. Yeah, you're still going to have it happen, but they're not going to have a sanction that it's legitimate, that people are thinking, well, they have a moral right to be immoral. On what planet are you on that you could believe that a religion of peace would make atheism, feminism, and homosexuality a crime punishable by death? There's very few things that should be punishable by death. Raping children, of course. Killing people. Yeah. Murdering people. Taking of innocent life. Yeah. But not believing in Islam, not believing in theology? What the? Yeah, I tell you, and I know, I want to just address this before I move on with some tax stuff, because it was good. This is good. I went through this on a Facebook post with somebody, and I know I shouldn't be doing this. And it had to do with somebody posted something that was anti-Muslim, as if, Muslims, and it was something stupid. It was something like, well, Muslims, when they're in a minority, always want the minority rights protected, but not so when they're in the majority. And I'm like, well, okay, but that's equally applicable to Judaism or any religion, especially Christianity. And so I mentioned the horrible treatment of women in the United States, the treatment of homosexuals in the United States, and the fact that there was a genocide, at least there was a state-sponsored genocide, all done by white European Christians. And he comes back and he says, not true Christians. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like a perfect example of the no true Scotsman, right? I said, but you can say the same damn thing about the Muslims. Well, they're not real Muslims. I mean, real Muslims just love thy neighbor and all that other good stuff and treat others the way, they peace and love. So the Saudi government, those aren't real Muslims. No, they are Muslims. You don't get to pick and choose like that. Logic doesn't allow you to do that. If you're going to condemn a religious group or a particular group that forgets about minority rights when they're in the majority, well, the world is full of that. That happens with every group. Although I'd like to think if the Sicilians were in control, they wouldn't do that to Italians. They wouldn't do to Italians what Italians, did to them, or the Spaniards, or whoever else was. I like to think that my Sicilian paisan would rise up and be better than that. But every group is pretty much, once they've gotten to power, they treat the minority like crap. Not real Christians. Oh my gosh, they were self-proclaimed active white European Christians who engage in a state-sponsored genocide. To quote Mick Mulvaney, get over it. That's the facts. Those are the facts. Those are true. Just like atheism is not a religion. Get over it. It's not a religion. It's a lack of belief, not a belief. Oy vey over here. Okay. Let's see, where do we go from here? Well, I had a very long call with the IRS, which usually, when the calls go this particular way, you guys, we all know what happens. They slam the phone down in anger, and then they puff their chest out and say, "Yeah, I just hung up on one of them tax protesters there. Well, I showed him." So we got this thing going where I've mentioned it on the show before, where we've played the State Department two-step. It was every single agency, every single department that we go to tells us this is the common thread here. Once they cannot support their claim, magically, we're not the right department. Doesn't matter that you took notes and you wrote down very clear that they were the right department and they had the authority, because I start every call the same way. I want to know I'm talking to the right guys. I recommend you guys do this. Get it out of the way. Make sure you're with the right department. You're with the gatekeeper. You need somebody who has the authority to vacate this bogus assessment. Else, or the only reason to talk to someone who's not a gatekeeper is if you're talking to someone who's actually responsible for making the determination. Then at least you can use that when you get to a gatekeeper. So you get your evidence and then you bring it to the gatekeeper. Someone's saying here, atheists don't believe while agnostics are open to it if proof is shown. Well, that's the thing. Some atheists are, some atheists are not. I've spoken to both. So some atheists, I think someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't like being referred to as an atheist because it has a negative connotation that your mind is closed shut. And I don't think that's an accurate description of atheism. Generally, I think you've got some people that are like that, and then you have some of the more agnostic. Well, if the evidence is, they're skeptics and they'll follow the evidence. So there is a distinction there. So it's just like some people try to paint anarchists as violent. So anyway, get back to the IRS thing here, and this just happened today, and so we figure out what they and this is the thing. The agent's last name that they told us anyway. I don't know if it's true. Ireland. So that's that's a good way to start. Well, last name is Ireland. I mean, it would have been better if it was, Messina, Palermo, but, Ireland is good for me too. And I walk it through the process. This is what I recommend if you want to show that the person making the accusation against you is wrong. You guys, a lot of you, but for new people, You got to know what their claim is. You want to be able to ask a clarifying question just so that you can write down exactly what their claim is. Now, they're very willing to make these legal claims. And even this one today questioned why I was framing it as a legal claim. And I had her admit their operating foundational legal claim is a financial report, which was compulsory. A compulsory financial report is why there is a tax obligation. So the financial report, they're saying, is the basis for the assessment. So I have to clarify. So you're saying that because of the financial report means that the Constitution and laws apply, and that gives you jurisdiction and created this alleged tax liability. Now, they all said, well, yeah. Yes. The problem comes in when you ask them for proof that that's true. So I even asked, so this is, I think, is a good leading question. So your position is the compulsory financial report somehow proves your laws apply, giving you jurisdiction and creating this alleged tax liability or this alleged obligation to file a return. Yes. So we start going off the rails because I'm asking for proof that that's true. And we get the usual stuff. She doesn't say it's a frivolous argument. So I'll give her, we got to give Ireland credit for that. She never says it's a frivolous argument. So that's a step in the right direction. And she didn't immediately hang up. She actually didn't hang up the phone on us. It was about a 40-minute call, and she didn't slam the phone down. But she did accuse me of making a constitutional argument and quoting the Constitution and the laws. No. When I do something like that, you can say, well, can you just read it back to me? I just cite what exactly did I say that led you to believe, what did I say? What statute did I quote? Because, of course, you didn't. But they're trying to get around like, oh, no, I made a claim and I can't support it. So they've got to distract. Well, if you're going to argue constitutionality, that'll have to go to court. No one's doing that. Again, like I said 100 times, I don't think the lower level people understand the difference between an issue of fact and an issue of law. I think the lawyers, of course, know. And so when you come across a lawyer that's pulling that crap, they're deliberately trying to mislead you. These other people, they're just out of their element. You caught them making claims they can't support. So they start they start scrambling. She even tried to say that we had to present proof. So for those who are new, the IRS and every government agency tends to have what's called a prima facie burden. Prima facie is Latin for at first look. It's a minimum number of facts that, if taken as true, for now, if we accept these facts as true, do they have a tendency to prove the proposition? These facts and only these facts, if we take them as true, do they prove the proposition? Here, when I had asked the woman, I have to give you the quote. I almost forgot about this. I almost forgot one of the most important parts of the story. I should have written it down here. When I asked her for actual proof that the Constitution applies just because there was a compulsory financial report, do you have any actual evidence to prove that that's true? Her direct quote here and I made a point to say it about 4 times back to her. I have no idea. Okay, so getting back to the prima facie, if there are facts that, if taken as true, prove the proposition, then you have met your prima facie burden and a rebuttable presumption is created, which then shifts the burden of proof to the accuser, to the accused. Now, in court, that just allows them to get to pretrial. That allows them to bind you over and compel you to participate in their proceedings. With the IRS, what it does is it creates a presumption of correctness. Now, the courts are pretty damn straightforward that a presumption of correctness is only created if the foundational claim, for example, is based on facts. Because if you just take the facts on their own, a compulsory financial report, does that in and of itself prove the proposition that there's a tax liability? I would argue no. Because part of the foundational claim is that the laws apply, because the laws are creating the liability, not the financial report. So I had to explain, you have Helvering versus Taylor, Adamson versus Commissioner. There's a lot of cases that show that, U.S. versus Janus is another one that, like U.S. versus Janus is great, because if the foundational legal claim, if the foundational claim is an assumption, then no presumption of correctness is created, because the prima facie burden is facts and facts only. Does the evidence say this? So what I was able to do is, and when we have evidence, I have every single one of your associates that I've spoken to prior to this call, and now I have your statement. I have no idea. There's no way in any proceeding with due process where you're dealing with anybody who's trying to be fair that is going to give you a presumption of correctness based on I have no idea. Now, through the entire call, she keeps repeating the legal claim. Sir, he is obligated to file. I have the report, and that means he is obligated to file a return. But at no time did she want or was able to answer the look. And I'm not going to keep asking the question. I've already got my admission. I don't have to keep asking that question. I am just building evidence here that we can hopefully use against them. I have no idea. So what she does in desperation now, she, just like so many other agents, this is very typical. What happens here? The State Department two-step. She now tries to say that no one at the IRS is responsible for this decision. It's the computer. And I haven't heard that BS since the Franchise Tax Board 10 years ago. And JT helped me with this. So what we did was I actually got with the one who programmed the computer. And he said, look, you'll have to put your questions in writing. Now, we all know what that means. How about phone call? I'll ignore them later. Let me get off the phone. Right? Anytime a politician says, put your questions in writing, there's almost no chance that they're going to answer them responsibly. I could even get a prosecutor to say they would be responsive if I put the questions in writing. Oh, and by the way, that particular one, it was disclosure, you dickhead. Okay. It was already in writing. They had already ignored it, which is why we were on the phone. That's the call when I said, will you be responsive? I will respond. Yeah, but will you be responsive? I will respond. That's a nice way of saying, about phone call, I'm not going to answer. And we knew it. So here, with the Franchise Tax Board, JT, who's an IT guy, who knows this technical stuff, I work with him on the questions. And it was only like 10, 15 questions about the programming. And in the gist of it was, does it assume that everyone is automatically subject to that the laws apply to everyone, regardless of any of the underlying facts. They wouldn't answer the questions because that's what they do. They lie. No, it's not Saudi Arabia. It's not. It's not China. No. But that's pretty damn dishonest. That still doesn't excuse them for what they're doing. It's just like people, when you point out that Trump, stole money from a veterans charity and is no longer allowed to have charities. But buttery males. The buttery males comes up every time. What about Hillary? Oh, good Lord, I'm tired of hearing that friggin' name. So she's trying to blame. So near the end of the call, she is saying, I'm not making these legal claims. The IRS is. I said, well, you are the IRS. You've made those claims the whole time. She's disavowing making it. She's just going by what the computer does. And then an interesting point. I've mentioned on the show, you always look, for those who are not familiar, if you're lucky enough to never have to have done this, when you get a form letter from the IRS, there will always be a number on there. You'll have a general contact number depending on which department is responsible for sending that form letter. And you could be on hold for anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours. And what they did in 1998, so that you can not have to do that, to help provide some due process and fairness and to help resolve these problems, they passed because there were a bunch of hearings showing, that were detailing severe, just systemic abuse by the Internal Revenue Service. It was no secret to any of us in 1997. Anybody with half a brain knew that the IRS acted as a criminal organization. No concept of right and wrong, just do what what their bosses have told them to do. As long as they don't steal from the company, they're good to go. Steal from all the plebes, but don't steal from the company. And after those hearings, they passed the Restructuring and Reform Act of 1998. Section 3705 is one of my go-to statutory violations. You always, every communication you have with the IRS, you always want to make sure and get them to verify that they are and you do this in writing too, that they are going to assign an agent with direct contact information. Now, I've mentioned before where the Buffalo office of the IRS has said it's their policy not to comply with that. So Ireland here today told me she had never even heard of that before. And so she has to investigate to see if it's even possible. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is quite something. I asked a clarifying question. I said, you have to get with your lead, your supervisor, and you have to ask them to find out if it's possible for you to comply with a law that's been on the books for 21 years. I said, you're going to have your supervisor call me either way she decides to do this. I even mentioned that we had, and she verified that we had already requested this probably a half a dozen or more times already. And they never assigned an agent, which is why we have to keep calling and waiting for so long. Someone's asking me something. I'll address that later. I even mentioned how this is further evidence to use against them. And that I think that the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration would be interested to know that you don't even know if it's possible to comply with your own law. Wow. So she didn't want to answer that, and she'll get back to me. Imagine that. The audacity of these people making all these legal claims against us, saying we got to comply with the law. But one simple part of their code that just says, on request, if you ask to have a revenue agent assigned with direct contact information, they don't even know if they can do that. I certainly hope we didn't lose the feed, because it looks like I got the feed over here. So maybe it's just someone on their end. That is not a tech issue on my end. This is like the third show, no tech issues. So I think we're doing pretty good over there for that. So here, the call ends without her slamming the phone down, and she refused to put a stay. So I had to ask twice, because she really didn't understand and answer the question the first time. Because now I asked for a stay because they have to first investigate if they can comply with the law. The reason for the stay is because we don't want it to escalate. So if they file a return or do a notice of deficiency, it's going to be extremely difficult to get this thing thrown out, to get it dropped. So we don't want it to escalate. So for those who are new, who haven't heard this, if you're dealing with the tax issue, especially the IRS, the most important initial thing that you can do, or not even the initial, but what you want to have happen, and it's critically important to having success with the IRS, you've got to get a stay of the computer process. They have to stop the computer from automatically escalating it. If you do not stop that, the more it escalates, the worse it's going to be. And if you get a notice of deficiency, yeah, and that's another thing. She tried to say the bad legal advice, saying that we should take our issue to the tax court. You cannot. And you try to explain it to them. Your own law, ma'am. The tax court does not have jurisdiction of underlying liability. They only have jurisdiction over the issue of amount, not underlying liability. In fact, just like Bill was saying to this woman, they will tell you, instruct you every step of the way, especially when you get a collection due process notice. You have to raise the issue of underlying liability before you get a notice of deficiency or a 30-day letter for a due process collection, a collection due process. But just like Bill was saying, you keep telling me, no, I can't raise this issue now. It has to be later. But then later will be too late. And the tax court does not have jurisdiction of that. They have jurisdiction over the amount, not underlying liability. So she refuses to put a stay. And so I ask, do you think, again, the second time, this is the second time I'm asking her, do you think it's fair to allow this matter to escalate while you're investigating whether you can comply with your own laws? You think that's fair? Yes, I do. Wow. That's some hardcore I don't give a damnism. And why don't they give a damn? Because they don't have to. They don't have to care. They go to work, morals, ethical behavior, right and wrong. It's got nothing to do with an IRS agent doing their job. Their job is to be an automaton and collect as much money as possible. And it doesn't matter the lines that they destroy. They actually think it's fair to have it escalate while they're investigating if they can comply with their own code. Wow. That is some Saudi Arabia level of illogic. No, of course, it's still not as bad as Saudi Arabia. I'm not saying that. I'm just like the thought process. Do you think it's really moral to kill somebody for no other reason that they don't believe in God? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It reminds me of that scene from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Do you think this car is safe for highway use? Yes. Yes, I do. She's not pretty, but she'll get you where you want to go. So it's the kind of the same thought process here, right? I think it's fair and moral, and that God is telling them, I have to kill homosexuals because it's... That's more than an infamia. That's just this. I don't have the words to describe just how bad that is. So that's Ms. Ireland from the IRS today. It's fair to have it escalate against somebody because they are investigating if they can comply with their own code. I don't even know if it's possible. You don't know if it's possible to assign an agent? What they are sure of, if you got money, we can take it. If we forced a third party to issue a financial statement, it's ours. Your money is ours. That's what they're sure of. That's what they're sure of. Well, I'll keep everyone updated depending on what happens there. I'm going to, wow, we didn't have any callers today, so I'm glad I had a lot of material to go here on the big broadcast. Somebody's saying, would I have a discussion with Juan Galt again? If he wants to call the show, he can call the show. We can discuss things. I will absolutely not tolerate the incessant talking over me again. And I won't use the mixer. I'll just dump them. And that goes for anybody. Dissent is welcome on the show. Someone's got a problem, just call and we can discuss it. But we have to be professional about it. Like I said, there's plenty of time usually to talk. And at least on a Saturday show, I got more time. And as long as it's professional and respectful, and we're treating each other, with mutual respect, then we're good to go. But anybody who disagrees with what I'm presenting on the show is more than welcome to call and voice their dissent. So, yeah, well, I'm not going to be the guy that bans. The only time someone gets banned, very few have, is when they call and they're making homosexual rants. If they're using excessive foul language, or they're just so angry and personally making personal attacks to me. Attack the argument all you want, but when you're starting to make personal attacks, after a while it makes for a bad show. So we cut them. So anyhow, I think we will cut it there. I appreciate everyone tuning into the big show today. It was November 20th, 2019 here on the No Stay Project. Remember, United States, it's not Saudi Arabia. It's not China. For me, anyway, I have no desire. I mean, I know somebody was, oh my gosh, he said, oh man, I'm going to go to Iraq as a contractor and I'm guaranteed 6 figures and whatnot. He says, are you interested? Nope. I think he may have even said, how much money would it take to get you to go do that? None. I won't even go to Mexico. So the idea of going to the Middle East, I mean, just no interest whatsoever of traveling like that. So, but I appreciate everyone tuning into the show. No tech issues, right? Should I maybe I shouldn't do that while we're, until after. I've already wrapped things up and got the recording. So if you want to help support the show, I really do appreciate it. It's definitely needed. markstevens.sales.com. That's SELZ, markstevens.sales.com. And, of course, markstevens.net, where you can get government indicted. And if you are being attacked by a bureaucrat, you want to learn to more effectively defend yourself against these people. We have a full model in the book. The success stories are there. You can see that after 2013, when the book was released, you can see other people that have replicated the success and have things tossed out. And we have scripts available and all that. And yeah, the full support, not just with email, but here on the show. As you know, that Balake is hopefully, and he's he calls rarely and gives us updates on what is going on with his. So anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning in today. I will be live on Saturday, of course. And it always disappoints me when people I think have watched, like long-time listeners, and well, what time is it on? It is still from 1 to 2 Pacific time on Saturday. So, hey, till then, salud.